If you'd told me 5 years ago that my family would hand the business to my sister and leave me out of the will, I would have laughed. Not because I thought it was impossible, but because I thought, deep down, that my parents loved us both equally. I thought that all those years of working late, helping out after school, and sacrificing weekends for the family store actually meant something. But when the time came and the papers were signed, it was my sister, Olivia, who got the keys. And me? I got a polite thank you and a suggestion to find my own path. I remembered the day it happened with a clarity that still stings. The family meeting was called on a Sunday, the kind where my mom made her famous cinnamon rolls and my dad wore his serious talk sweater. Olivia and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the air thick with anticipation. My parents exchanged glances, and then my dad cleared his throat. "We've made a decision about the business," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Olivia will be taking over. She's shown a real passion for it, and we think she's ready." I looked at Olivia, searching her face for a hint of surprise, but she just smiled, her eyes shining with pride. I waited for someone to say my name, to acknowledge the years I'd put in, but the moment never came. My mom reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "We know you'll do great things, honey. This just feels right for the family." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I didn't want to make a scene, didn't want to ruin Olivia's moment, so I smiled, congratulated her, and excused myself to the backyard. I stood there for a long time, staring at the garden I'd helped plant, wondering when I'd stopped being part of the family's future. The weeks that followed were a blur. Olivia moved into her new office, redecorated the store, and started making changes. My parents beamed with pride, telling everyone how lucky they were to have such a talented daughter at the helm. I tried to be supportive, but every visit to the store felt like a reminder of what I'd lost. Customers asked why I wasn't around as much, and I just shrugged, saying I was exploring new opportunities. The truth was, I was lost. I'd spent so much of my life working for the family business that I didn't know who I was without it. I applied for jobs, went on interviews, but nothing felt right. I watched Olivia thrive, her confidence growing with every decision she made. My parents doted on her, inviting her to dinner, asking for her advice, treating her like the golden child. One night, after another awkward family dinner, I sat in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. I thought about all the times I'd put the business before myself, all the dreams I'd put on hold. I realized I had a choice. I could keep feeling sorry for myself, or I could do something about it. So I started over. I took a job at a small tech startup, working as an assistant to the CEO. It wasn't glamorous, and the pay was barely enough to cover rent, but it was a start. I threw myself into the work, learning everything I could about the industry. I stayed late, asked questions, and volunteered for every project. Slowly, I started to find my footing. The startup grew quickly, and so did my responsibilities. I moved from assistant to project manager, then to director of operations. I learned how to run a business from the inside out, how to manage people, balance budgets, and make tough decisions. My boss, Mr. Carter, became a mentor, teaching me lessons I'd never learned at the family store. Meanwhile, Olivia's business was struggling. The economy was tough, and she made a few risky decisions that didn't pay off. My parents tried to help, but their advice was outdated, and Olivia was too proud to ask for help. I watched from a distance, torn between wanting to step in and knowing I wasn't welcome. Then, one day, everything changed. Mr. Carter called me into his office, a rare smile on his face. "We're expanding," he said. "We're looking to acquire a few local businesses, and I want you to lead the project." I nodded, excitement and nerves swirling in my stomach. "Which businesses?" He slid a folder across the desk. I opened it and my heart stopped. There on the top of the list was my family's store. I stared at the folder, my mind racing. My family's store, my childhood, my memories, my heartbreak was now just another line item in a corporate acquisition. I tried to keep my face neutral, but Mr. Carter must have seen something flicker in my eyes. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his tone gentle. I shook my head, forcing a smile. "No, sir. I know that business. My family owns it." He raised his eyebrows, surprised. "Really? Well, that could be an advantage. You know the ins and outs, the strengths and weaknesses. I trust you to handle this with professionalism." I nodded, my heart pounding. "Of course, I'll do my best." The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, spreadsheets, and late-night strategy sessions. I pored over the store's financials, noting the drop in revenue, the rising expenses, the missed opportunities. I saw the mistakes Olivia had made, overstocking unpopular items, neglecting online sales, ignoring customer feedback. It was hard not to feel a mix of frustration and sadness. I knew she was trying, but she was in over her head. Mr. Carter wanted a full report, so I spent hours compiling data, analyzing trends, and drafting recommendations. I was honest but fair, highlighting the store's potential as well as its problems. I suggested ways to modernize operations, improve marketing, and rebuild customer loyalty. I knew the business better than anyone, and I wanted it to succeed, even if it meant someone else was in charge. When the day of the acquisition meeting arrived, I dressed carefully, choosing a suit that made me feel confident and in control. I arrived at the office early, reviewing my notes one last time. Mr. Carter met me in the conference room, his expression serious. "Are you ready?" I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Ready." Olivia arrived a few minutes later, looking tired and anxious. She was surprised to see me, but tried to hide it behind a polite smile. "I didn't know you worked here," she said, her voice strained. "I do," I replied, keeping my tone professional. "I'm leading the acquisition team." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I saw something. Fear, maybe? Or regret? But she quickly composed herself, turning her attention to Mr. Carter. The meeting was tense. Mr. Carter explained the terms of the acquisition, outlining the benefits for both parties. Olivia listened carefully, asking questions and taking notes. I could see the weight of the decision on her shoulders. She wanted to save the business, but she knew she couldn't do it alone. After the meeting, Olivia pulled me aside. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I shrugged, trying to keep my emotions in check. "It's just business, Olivia. I'm here to do my job." She looked at me, searching my face for a hint of the sister she used to know. "Do you think this is the right thing to do?" I hesitated, then nodded. "I do. The store needs help. This is the best way forward." She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I wish things were different." "Me too," I said softly. The acquisition went through quickly. Mr. Carter's company took over operations, bringing in new systems, new staff, and a new vision. Olivia stayed on as manager, but her role was diminished. She reported to the new owner, Mr. Carter, and, by extension, to me. At first, Olivia struggled with the changes. She resented the new policies, the stricter oversight, the loss of autonomy. She avoided me at work, keeping our conversations brief and formal. Our parents were confused and hurt, unsure how to navigate the new dynamic. Family dinners became awkward, filled with forced small talk and unspoken tension.
But as the months passed, things began to shift. The store started to recover, sales improved, and customers returned. Olivia saw the benefits of the new approach, and she slowly began to trust the process. She asked me for my advice, listened to my suggestions, and even thanked me for my help.
One afternoon, after a particularly busy day, Olivia stopped by my office. She closed the door behind her, her expression serious. "I owe you an apology," she said. "I was angry when you got the job here. I felt like you were taking something from me. But now I see that you're just trying to help. You've always been the one who kept things running, even when no one noticed." I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "Thanks, Olivia. That means a lot." She hesitated, then added, "I hope we can be sisters again, not just coworkers." I nodded, my eyes stinging with tears. I'd like that. From that day on, our relationship began to heal. We found a new rhythm, balancing work and family, support and independence. Our parents eventually came around, proud of both their daughters and the roles we played in saving the family business. But there was one thing Olivia still didn't know. One secret I'd kept to myself. While she managed the day-to-day operations, I had been promoted again. I was now Mr. Carter's right hand, overseeing not just our family store, but the entire chain of businesses he owned. In a way, I was Olivia's boss, and she had no idea. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. I'd spent years feeling invisible, working in the background while Olivia got the spotlight. Now, I was the one making the big decisions, shaping the future of not just our old family business, but dozens of others. Yet, I kept my new role quiet. I didn't want to embarrass Olivia or make her feel small. I wanted her to succeed, to find her own confidence, just as I had. My days were filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and site visits. I traveled to different locations, met with managers, and helped turn struggling stores into thriving businesses. I loved the challenge, the sense of purpose, the knowledge that I was making a real impact. But every time I visited our old family store, I felt a pang of nostalgia, a reminder of where it all began. Olivia was doing better too. She'd grown into her role, learning from her mistakes and embracing the changes. She started new community programs, brought in local products, and even launched a social media campaign that went viral. The store became a hub for the neighborhood again, a place where people gathered, shared stories, and felt at home. One evening, after a long day at work, I stopped by the store to pick up a few things. Olivia was behind the counter, chatting with a customer. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. "Hey, stranger, haven't seen you in a while." I grinned, grabbing a basket. "I've been busy. Lots of new projects." She rang up my items, then leaned in, lowering her voice. "You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you're here. I couldn't have done this without you." I felt a lump in my throat. "You're doing great, Liv. I'm proud of you." She handed me my receipt, her eyes shining. "Thanks. That means a lot." As I left the store, I realized how much we'd both changed. We were no longer rivals, no longer competing for our parents' approval. We were partners, each finding our own way, each building something we could be proud of. But the truth about my new position was getting harder to hide. Mr. Carter wanted me to take a more public role, to represent the company at industry events and in the media. My name started appearing in press releases, my photo in business magazines. People in the community began to notice, and soon the rumors started. One afternoon, Olivia called me, her voice tense. "Can you talk?" We met at a quiet cafe, away from the prying eyes of family and coworkers. She slid a magazine across the table, my face staring back at me from the cover. She asked, "Why didn't you tell me?"
her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. I didn't want to make things harder for you. I wanted you to have your own success, your own story. She looked at me, hurt and confusion warring in her eyes. But you're my sister. I wanted to know. I wanted to celebrate with you. I reached across the table, taking her hand. I'm sorry, Liv. I should have told you. I didn't want to overshadow you. She squeezed my hand, a tear slipping down her cheek. You could never overshadow me. You inspire me. You always have. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. Finally, Olivia smiled, wiping her eyes. So, what's it like being the boss? I laughed, the tension breaking. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. She grinned, her old spark returning. Well, if you ever need advice, you know where to find me. We both laughed, the years of rivalry melting away. For the first time, I felt truly seen, not just as the boss, not just as the sister, but as myself. Our relationship grew stronger after that. We supported each other, shared ideas, and celebrated each other's wins. Our parents were thrilled, proud of the women we'd become. The store continued to thrive, and so did we. But the journey wasn't over. There were still challenges ahead, new competitors, changing markets, and the ever-present pressure to succeed. But I knew we could handle it, together. One day, Mr. Carter called me into his office. I'm retiring, he announced, a twinkle in his eye, and I want you to take over as CEO. I was stunned, overwhelmed by the responsibility and the trust he was placing in me. But I knew I was ready. I accepted the offer, determined to lead the company with integrity, vision, and heart. When I told Olivia, she hugged me, her pride shining brighter than ever. You deserve this, she said. You've worked so hard. I'm so happy for you. I smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment I'd never known before. I'd found my own path, my own success, my own happiness. And I'd done it without stepping on anyone else to get there. Taking over as CEO was both exhilarating and terrifying. The company was bigger than anything I'd ever managed, with hundreds of employees, dozens of locations, and a reputation to uphold. I spent my first weeks meeting with every department, listening to their ideas and concerns, and learning the details of each business we owned, including the family store, which still held a special place in my heart. I made it a point to visit the store often, not just as a boss, but as a sister and a friend. Olivia and I would sit in the back office after closing, sharing coffee and stories, brainstorming ways to make the business even better. She had grown so much, her confidence, her creativity, and her ability to connect with customers. I was proud of her, and I made sure she knew it. The company faced its share of challenges. A new competitor opened up down the street, offering flashy discounts and aggressive marketing. Sales dipped and morale wavered. I called an emergency meeting with the store managers, including Olivia. We spent hours analyzing data, brainstorming ideas, and coming up with a plan. Olivia suggested hosting community events, farmers markets, art shows, and charity drives to bring people back to the store. I loved the idea and gave her the green light to run with it. The events were a huge success, drawing crowds and generating buzz. Sales rebounded, and the store became a community hub once again. Meanwhile, I focused on modernizing the company as a whole. I invested in new technology, streamlined operations, and launched a mentorship program for young women in business. I wanted to create opportunities for others, just as Mr. Carter had done for me. The media took notice. I was invited to speak at conferences, featured in business magazines, and even interviewed on TV. My story of being overlooked, of starting over, of rising to the top, resonated with people. I received letters and emails from women all over the country, thanking me for inspiring them to chase their dreams. Through it all, Olivia was my biggest supporter. She cheered me on, offered advice, and celebrated every milestone. Our parents were overjoyed, telling anyone who would listen about their two successful daughters. Family dinners were no longer tense or awkward. They were filled with laughter, love, and pride. But success brought new pressures. The company grew rapidly, and with growth came growing pains. There were tough decisions to make: layoffs, restructuring, and the constant challenge of staying ahead of the competition. I leaned on Olivia, my team, and my mentors for support. I learned to trust my instincts, to make decisions with both my head and my heart. One evening, after a particularly stressful week, Olivia and I sat on the roof of the store, watching the sunset. She turned to me, her expression serious. "Do you ever miss the old days? When it was just us, working in the store, dreaming about the future?" I smiled, thinking back to those simpler times. "Sometimes, but I wouldn't trade what we have now for anything. We've built something amazing, Liv. Together." She nodded, her eyes shining. "I'm glad we found our way back to each other." I squeezed her hand, grateful for the journey we'd shared. We'd both made mistakes, both faced setbacks, but we'd come out stronger. Together. As the company continued to grow, I made it a priority to give back to the community. We launched scholarship programs, supported local charities, and created internships for students from underprivileged backgrounds. I wanted our success to mean something, to make a difference in the lives of others. Olivia took on a new role, overseeing community outreach and engagement. She thrived in the position, using her creativity and passion to build connections and make a positive impact. Our partnership was stronger than ever, and the company flourished under our leadership. Looking back, I realized that being passed over for the family business was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to find my own path, to discover my strengths, and to build a life that was truly mine. I was no longer defined by my family's expectations or by the roles they assigned me. I was my own person, confident, capable, and proud. And as for Olivia, she found her own success, her own happiness, and her own place in the world. We were no longer rivals, but partners, each supporting the other, each celebrating the other's wins. The journey wasn't easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but I knew that together we could handle anything.
The years that followed were a testament to what true partnership and family could look like. Olivia and I continued to grow the company, always pushing each other to do better, to dream bigger. We celebrated every milestone, new store openings, awards, anniversaries, with the same excitement we once had as kids playing in the aisles after closing time. Our parents, once so certain about who should lead the family business, became our biggest fans. They attended every event, cheered us on from the front row, and never missed an opportunity to tell people how proud they were of both their daughters. The old wounds faded, replaced by a sense of unity and shared purpose. One day, Olivia and I were invited to speak at a national business conference. We stood on stage together, sharing our story, the rivalry, the heartbreak, the unexpected twists, and the ultimate triumph of working side by side. The audience listened, captivated, and when we finished, the applause was thunderous. Afterward, young women lined up to talk to us, asking for advice, sharing their own dreams, and thanking us for showing them what was possible. Back at the store, life settled into a new rhythm. Olivia's community programs became a model for other locations, and I continued to mentor young leaders, always looking for the next person who needed a chance. We made it a point to hire people who had been overlooked, who just needed someone to believe in them. The company's culture changed, becoming more inclusive, more supportive, more like the family we'd always wanted. There were still hard days, tough markets, difficult decisions, moments of doubt, but we faced them together, always remembering how far we'd come. We learned to lean on each other, to ask for help, to celebrate the small victories as much as the big ones. One evening, as we closed up the store after a long day, Olivia turned to me, her eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly, "for never giving up on me, for believing in us, even when I didn't." I hugged her, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in my heart. We did this together, Liv. I wouldn't have it any other way. As I walked home that night, I thought about the journey, The pain of being left out, the struggle to find my place, the joy of discovering my own strength. I realized that sometimes the things that hurt us the most are the very things that push us to become who we're meant to be. My sister got the family business, but she didn't know I was the new owner's boss. In the end, it didn't matter who had the title or the keys. What mattered was that we found our way back to each other, that we built something lasting, something meaningful, something that would outlive us both. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or left behind, know this: your story isn't over. Sometimes the best chapters come after the hardest goodbyes. Keep going, find your own path, and when you do, don't forget to reach back and help someone else find theirs own. Because in the end, success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become and who you bring with you along the way.